Okay, it's now my real big pleasure and honor to welcome Nicole Valdovinos as our lived experience expert, survivor, advocate, mother. I just love her bio. It's probably my most favorite bio that I've ever read of a speaker. So I am going to make sure that I read it in its entirety. So, Nicole is a resilient mother of 5 daughters, a certified surgical technologist, and a dedicated peer recovery coach. After struggling with addiction for over 30 years, she's transformed her life and now walks alongside others on their recovery journeys. Her past was marked by shame and guilt as a single parent, navigating the challenges of active addiction, including abduction, sexual assault, domestic violence, and mental health struggles, all while maintaining a career in the healthcare field. Having lived a double life by hiding her home lifestyle from her professional life, she now embraces her authenticity and strength and teaches her younger kids how not to be afraid to be themselves. Through the transformative peer-led program of Hard Beauty, she has rediscovered parts of herself that she thought were lost. Nicole is learning to forgive and love herself, which she will admit has been her greatest challenge. Today, she faces those same challenges with courage and hope, and she challenges her clients to do the same. Everyone has a story, but not everyone gets the opportunity to overcome the challenges of trauma without a community of support. And that is her quote. So thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us. And we look forward to hearing your story.
Good afternoon. It's freezing cold outside and very windy. So good thing we're in here. um, my name's Nicole. Thank you for reading my bio. This is my first time sharing my story in front of an audience of any amount, so you'll have to forgive my nerves. When I was asked to speak here today, I was beside myself. You see, 2 years ago, I envisioned that one day I would be right in this very spot, advocating for those who are too scared to use their own voice. And in the process of writing this presentation, I found that I honestly had no idea what I wanted to say. And I must have started over at least 4 or 5 times. To be honest, I had too much to say and not enough time to say it all. So I decided instead to face my fears and get vulnerable and real. There are parts of my story that I've told many times, and there are still parts that I have not had the courage to face. I'm still a work in progress, which means that there are parts of my journey that I still have to hold on to. Excuse me. So, my name's Nicole, and I'm proud to say that I'm a single mom in sustained recovery from substance use disorder, intimate partner violence, domestic violence, a survivor of sexual assault and sex trafficking. And this is my story. Here's the person that you would have met in an interview or in the OR assisting with hemostasis. I'm a nationally certified surgical tech. My career took me from Las Vegas operating rooms, where I worked for 6 years doing vascular cases, thoracotomies, lobectomies, and robots. Took my first travel assignment in 2014 when I went into my first trauma hospital in Arizona. Side note, I didn't like Arizona. I spent the winter of 2016 on labor and delivery on a contract in Pocatello, Idaho. That following spring, I switched gears and was hired on the heart team as a second team heart tech. I had to surpass 2 panel interviews with the current heart team, and then I had to convince the heart doctors that I knew what I was doing. I was pulled away from my time in Idaho, and I had to go back to Vegas for some family time, and before too long, I was back on the road. To be honest, I was over the Vegas heat and I needed a change in scenery, so I agreed to join a friend on their way to visit family in Wisconsin. It didn't take long for me to realize that a summer in Wisconsin was no better than a summer in Vegas. I finally signed on to a contract here in Colorado. I spent 3 months working in the main OR at Memorial in the Springs. At the end of that contract, I went on to Grand Junction for another 3-month assignment, only to come back here full-time in 2019 at UC Health North Hospital in Briargate. Spent 2 years in their main OR before my personal circumstances changed and I found myself looking for a graveyard position. The only one available was the birth center. So in 2021, I transitioned to the birth center, and I've been assisting with deliveries there ever since. Each role has taught me so much about resilience, adaptability, and the importance of never forgetting where I came from. I am a mother to 5 beautiful daughters. My first daughter was born when I was born in 1998, only 3 years after I graduated high school. When my second child was born, I was 24, and I had my third daughter at age 26. 13 years later, started over. In 2016, my fourth was born. I was 39 and considered AMA, advanced maternal age, at 39. Just when I thought for sure I was done having kids, I was blessed with my fifth. I was 42 by then. All of my girls were delivered by C-section, and each pregnancy more high risk than their siblings before them. This background is all you would have ever known about me, because up until 3 years ago, that's all I allowed anyone to ever know about me. Now I want to introduce the other Nicole, the part of me I didn't allow anyone to see, the struggles, the loss, the isolation, the violence, chaos, and uncertainty that was part of my life for many years. This is the first time I'm sharing my true self with an audience of this size and in a professional arena, so you'll have to excuse me if I get emotional. During the remainder of my time up here, I'm going to tell you the story behind my resume. This is the truth of my lived experience. My hope is that by the end of my presentation, you will understand why I was asked to be here today. And let me take a moment to rewind, take you back to where it really begins. I lived with my alcoholic mom until 7th grade. I grew up learning that she was someone I feared. When she would drink, she turned into one of 2 evil characters. The gushy, "Do you know how much I love you, Mom?" Or the angry, "Why are you such a little whore, Mom?" In either case, I swore I would never treat my kids the way she treated me, and I became very aware that my mom was not somebody I could trust to ask for help when I needed to. During my years with her, I was molested and blamed, beaten and blamed. DHS was called, and again, I was beaten and blamed. Finally, after years of being the identified problem and all-around bad seed in her story, I was the one that had to go. Not the alcohol, it was me, excuse me. By the age of 15, I was living with my gay dad and his partner, and things seemed to be getting better. My dad was my hero and my best friend. He treated me with love and understanding. It was the complete opposite of what my mom had given me, and I can see that now. I was introduced to meth, which took me down a rabbit hole of Long Beach gang affiliations, ditching school, parties, alcohol, and drugs. Once I ran away from home for no real reason. When I came back, I was pregnant, which resulted in a visit from mom and inevitably an abortion. It took me years to stop being angry with her for my childhood, and after years of therapy and healing, I can finally forgive her because it wasn't all her fault. She could only raise me with the tools she had been given. She didn't know what she didn't know. Now let me introduce you to the impact of my adult relationships, starting with my first marriage. In hindsight, I was definitely too young. We never had any kids together, and that was probably the most positive aspect of our time together. I quickly realized we had married for the wrong reasons. These choices led me down yet another troubling path, including an arrest for check fraud and ongoing gang affiliations. Towards the end of our marriage, I was kidnapped for 2 weeks, and during those weeks, I was loaded up on drugs, beaten, raped, and sex trafficked. I was unable to forgive his lack of interest in finding me, and that marriage was forever doomed. So instead, we just ended it. In 1997, I met the man that would become my second husband, father of my 3 oldest girls. I was just 19 and he was 39. Again, married for the wrong reasons. He struggled with alcohol and we both struggled with substance use. There were multiple domestic violence incidents, and at one point I found myself arrested on a legal hold in a psych facility. These relationships will later be the foundation I used to help find my voice. They taught me hard lessons and highlighted the cycles I needed to break. In 2003, I made a life-changing decision to walk away from my second husband and start fresh in Las Vegas at the age of 26. Well, let me pause. My mom took me to court first for guardianship of my 3 girls, and I didn't have the means to fight her and her lawyer. And let's face it, I was unable to sit in mediation and lie about not having the cops called to my house, sleeping on floors of roach-infested apartments, living out of my car with 2 kids while pregnant with the third. By the time I gave up fighting her, my youngest had been born and was about 5 months old when we left. Oh shit, sorry. Sorry, wrong button. It was a bold move that my mom didn't plan on, and I refused to let her move my kids from California to Nevada without me tagging along. I wasn't about to give total control over to my abusive alcoholic mom, not when I had no doubt that even though I wasn't living in great conditions, I was still a better mom than she was, right? I really thought I was better because I didn't beat my kids. I didn't guzzle alcohol. I was only using meth during my pregnancy and on into breastfeeding. I saw that the way out from this abusive marriage was to follow my kids to Nevada, and it was a chance to regain control of my life. But life's challenges didn't stop there, and by 2005, depression had crept in, leading to a difficult period. I was sleeping 16-hour days, and when I was awake, I wasn't engaging with my kids. This is where my mom felt that she had no choice but to ask me to leave. It wasn't healthy for my kids to see me at this low point. I understood that. There's a huge loss of time during these years, and I can only recall glimpses, so you'll have to forgive me for the fast forward. In 2009, I achieved a significant milestone by purchasing my first home. It was a symbol of stability and growth. Then in 2010, I lost my grandmother to lymphoma, and that grief overwhelmed me so much, I dove deeper into using. That same year, even though I had been using frequently, I graduated from my CST program, and I almost made valedictorian. Still, it's a professional achievement I'm incredibly proud to say to this day. Each of these experiences, the highs and the lows, contributed to the person I am today. They were not just events, they were lessons that prepared me for what was to come next. Now slide. 2012, I met someone who would play a significant part in my life later on. He was the father of my kid's best friend. At the time, I didn't know that he also used intravenously. Between 2013 and 14, the situation changed when we started using together. I inadvertently made it so that I became the supplier for our substance use. I would bring home clean needles, along with the sharps container and sterile water. This was slowly becoming even more unhealthy than when we started. Eventually, this relationship became pure drama and led me to a near-fatal suicide attempt in 2014. I had loaded up on soma, adrenaline, and all the meth I had on hand. The next morning, my boyfriend managed to make me throw up and pass out. The next thing I can remember was my eldest daughter, in high school at the time, had called the paramedics because she couldn't wake me up. They stood over my bed asking me questions like who was president, what year was it, what month was it, did I know my name? Of course I passed with flying colors. They told my daughter that I was fine and I just needed to sleep off the muscle relaxers I told them that I took for cramps. In the aftermath, I was once again facing my mom, who stepped in and took the lead, removing my kids from home and into her care. Now, let me remind you that to outsiders, my coworkers, my kids' soccer coaches, and team moms, everything seemed normal. No issues, no drama. They saw a happy couple with kids from 2 different families coexisting with issues that were no worse than an overdue bill. In that same week, my mom had my car repossessed, and because she was my co-signer, she could. Not too long after that, we faced eviction. And as we prepared to move out and go our separate ways, I moved in with a divorcee who had a huge house and college roommates. My ex had nowhere to go, so I decided to sell the crappy used 4Runner that we bought to replace my car. I told him to keep the $3,000 so he could put a deposit on an apartment. Well, later that week, I went back to the house to move out a few more things and found my best friend of 10 years in bed with him. got into a fist fight, had the cops on the phone while I was fighting her. That fight ended both relationships. By now, I was just in survival mode and I didn't care who was affected by my actions. I became numb and vindictive. I pushed away my girls because I didn't want to see the monster. Didn't want them to see the monster I was becoming, and also because I didn't want to stop being the angry addict who was on a path to self-destruction. But it didn't end there. When I moved into the frat house, my two oldest insisted they had to stay with me. And my mom decided they were old enough to make their own decisions. They didn't want to live with her anymore, so they came along. It was just a temporary pit stop that was almost my end. Another overdose, this time meth and Klonopin. And yet somehow after swallowing the whole prescription, I walked out of that frat house and wandered off around the neighborhood. I was brought home by police and my oldest daughter once again carried me up the stairs. Now I would love to be able to tell you that the rest of this part of my story ends well. Truth is, the memory only comes in waves, and all I know is that the cops found me passed out on someone's front lawn. My daughter carried me upstairs as I peed on myself. She threw me in the shower fully dressed, and then I blacked out again. I was in a blackout for the next 3 to 4 days, but I have been told that I wasn't actually blacked out. I don't remember any of it, but apparently I was still engaging with people around me, walking, talking, moving furniture, and moving my stuff out of that house and into my own rental again. After that, I went into treatment. They were starting a new dual diagnosis treatment program, and my therapist said I would be a perfect fit. So I made the call to see if they had an open bed, and I was put on a wait list. I got tired of waiting. I found an open detox bed on the north side of the Vegas Strip, and if you've ever been to the north side of the Vegas Strip, you know it's one of the worst areas to even drive through, let alone try to detox in. By the time I got into treatment, I felt ready. It was time. I was doing it for me. My mom had my kids again, and this was going to be it, right? No. While in treatment, I met a guy, who by 2016 would become the father of my fourth. And in February of 2016, in February of 2016, our daughter was born. I delivered her at the hospital I worked at in Vegas. There was so much that had happened between him and I that I can't even begin to tell you the trauma I still hold on to. The amount of betrayal, delusions, maternal drug use, occasions of decreased fetal movement, and the overwhelming amount of stress alone. I was put on bed rest because after I delivered, my incision had dehisced. I was assigned a home health nurse that would come in twice a week to change my bandages. I had little contact with the outside world and eventually went into postpartum depression. Not too long after, I got a call from social services. That threw us into a huge argument that got ugly and violent. And because I was suppressing so much anger, I didn't hold back. We got into a physical fight, and at one point, I found myself on top of him, choking him with all my strength. Till something came over me, call it a wave of reality, caused me to let go. As a result, he ended up with a broken rib, which to this day, I'm not proud of, but at the same time, I don't regret. I had so much pent-up anger, I went into survival mode. It changed nothing between us, except now I question what was I fighting for. If you can recall the professional resume I showed you when we started this trip down memory lane, I was traveling as a surgical tech between 2014 and 2018. I've already taken you through a few of my traumas. Now I'm going to try to quickly take you inside a little deeper. In truth, I took travel assignments to run away from my life, but it followed me and it always brought me back to Vegas, where, of course, my mom was always willing to open the door with a fake smile and lots of judgment. When I left for Idaho in the winter of 2016, I thought for sure that it was time to stop running. I believed I had evolved into the mom I needed to be. I believed I was putting my daughter's needs first. Not true. Eventually, I caught my boyfriend cheating on me with one of the housekeepers at the extended stay my agency had contracted for my housing. His drinking got worse, and one morning before I needed to leave for work, he decided to take off with my car. A resident I worked with at L&B offered for his wife to take my daughter for the day. They had kids her age, and I thought it would give my kid a chance to be social and get out of the hotel room. A few days would go by before I heard back from her dad. I managed to stay clean during this time. I knew I was the only responsible parent between the two of us. Even still, I was starting to feel defeated. As far as my experience was going, recovery wasn't giving me anything different than my using had. I couldn't keep up with him and his drinking, and it was about to cost me my job. I couldn't allow that to happen. I would kick him out, he would get arrested, I would get a call explaining to me that he was going to be released on house arrest. Great. I had a babysitter again, and he had no choice but to stay home and not drink. I didn't consider how having him back in the house in any capacity would affect me. My daughter was happy, and he was cornered. I avoided him, which meant that I was also avoiding our daughter. And he became so angry with me for that avoidance that he became resentful. But I didn't care anymore. When he was released from house arrest, he up and disappeared again. 4 days later, found him in a trailer park with another woman and her kids. Same housekeeper from that hotel. I don't know why I begged him to come home. He wanted me to leave our daughter with him while I went on with my day. He had a great way of making other people believe he was abused and controlled. I couldn't wrap my head around the idea that I had given him everything. A nice house, he didn't have to work. He was proud to say that he was a stay-at-home dad. Why was he willing to give all of that up to live in a trailer park with another woman's kids? I found out later that it was the alcohol and drugs. Her dad was the trailer park dealer, and since I was trying to stay clean, this new family was ideal for him, which should have given me that wake-up call. It was obvious what meant more to him, and it wasn't us. I'm going to fast forward through this part. This the right one. Oops, it's the wrong slide. Okay. I would take off to Wisconsin, went traveling with a friend, summer of 2017. I'm ad-libbing now. That was awful. When I picked up the contract to come here to Colorado Springs at Memorial, and I thought I was picking up the pieces to my life. What took us 6 days to travel from Nevada to Wisconsin took us only 16 hours to drive back the other direction to Colorado. Things got really bad between me and my chaperone, which had me questioning my own reality. There was a whole lot of mind games and personality clashes. At the end of the summer, I was able to pick up a contract, though, okay. Agreed to go our separate ways, but he insisted that I owed him money and decided he was just going to have to travel along with me in order to get it back. After the 16-hour drive to Colorado, I just needed to pay off the dead weight and I would be free. But by now we were not on speaking terms, which made living together nearly impossible. He was passive aggressive and anything could set him off. When he got angry, he towered over me. One day I was working and he started to send me a few disturbing texts that scared me and had me thinking twice about bringing my daughter home that evening. So out of fear, I called the police and had him removed from the apartment. Took him to court on a domestic violence charge, which he attempted to have dropped by having me testify in court that it was all a big misunderstanding. But the judge shut him down pretty quick, calling him a manipulator with an agenda, and that kind of behavior would not be tolerated in her courtroom. Perfect. I was so close to being on my own, was so close to independence and freedom. Winter of 2018, I took a contract in Grand Junction, and my daughter had a daycare to go to while I worked at St. Mary's OR. I was finally able to breathe again. Yeah, right. Surprise, found myself pregnant. When I told the father about the pregnancy, he looked down at me because he was 6'2". And all he could say was, "You don't think that I'm going to just stick around because you're pregnant, do you?" Hell no. Luckily, I was able to get a permanent benefited position when I came back to the Springs at Memorial's main OR at the North Campus. Once again, things were getting better. So my ex came back into my life because he wanted to be the hero. Oh no. I was considered a very high-risk pregnancy. Oh my gosh, where'd I go? Sorry, guys. Um, the ex that had stepped away out of, or stepped in out of concern for my high-risk pregnancy, stepped up to love a child that wasn't his. Stepped up and brought drugs back into my life. And from then on, I used daily. In September of 2019, I had my 5th daughter, the very same hospital I worked at again. After she was born, I went through some severe postpartum depression and found myself debating on whether or not I could give her the life she deserved. Almost gave her up for adoption. Then my 5-year-old daughter asked me if she had to stay home with dad anymore because she was scared of him. All he ever did was yell at her or ignore her. And I knew I had a problem. I had to ask him to leave. And after all the many nights when the police were called, threats were made, tears shed, and hearts broken, the amount of arguing and animosity between us was overwhelming. He would harass us in the middle of the night by banging on the windows and yelling profanities. He spent nights sleeping in my daughter's play tent in the front yard. You could catch him on the doorbell camera, stumbling in and out of the tent drunk and talking to himself. I needed this to be over, so I fought to make sure it was the end. My substance use gave me the ability to hide inside of my addiction, and I did my best to stay numb. I used every day just so that I could get out of bed and function. I could not allow depression to take over and leave me alone in my bed all day. I was living a double life. Oops. Then one day, my dealer of all people asked me how I was doing. I said, "To be honest, I'm not so well." I took a deep breath and checked in with my reality. My kids were safe. We were away from all the drunken late night visits and police calls, away from the drama and chaos my ex would bring to our lives. As far as I knew, he was on the streets of Denver and I had no clue where we lived. It was time for me to take care of me. So in the summer of 2022, I did it. I went into detox at Peak Vista, or Peak View, sorry, not Peak Vista, at Peak View Behavioral Health, discharged to PHP, and then I spent a year in IOP groups. I started services with Mentally Strong, and I continue services to this day. By the time I was ready to discharge from IOP, I was scared. The idea of relapse was too accessible. I only had a year of sobriety behind me, but my kids, they had their mom back, and I was fully present. I started going to recovery events and volunteered with Serenity Recovery Connection. Working in the birth center, I saw a serious need for maternal advocates, and that brought me to realize what my purpose in life was, and my passion grew stronger with every shift I worked. I took trainings to become a peer recovery coach, and then I sought out an agency that was building a network program for maternal peer supporters. In 2024, just 2 days before my 2-year sobriety date, I was hired on with Heart Beauty as a peer coach. Now my kids are thriving, and they're the happiest I've ever seen them. I can look back at my past and not see it as sadness or regret. Had I not lived through the last 33 years of addiction, trauma, loss, fear, self-loathing, postpartum depression, I could not support the clients that I support today. If I would have had a peer recovery coach in my corner all those years ago, I probably wouldn't have gone through so much pain. But I also would not be able to stand here today and proudly present my journey to all of you. My name's Nicole Valdovinos, and I'm a surgical tech at UC Health Memorial Hospital's Birth Center. And for the last 3 years, I've been a proud single mom in recovery from substance use disorder, sexual trauma, domestic violence, sex trafficking, and mental health disorders. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Oh, I think we all recognize that Nicole didn't have to share her story. Um, Certainly not as a first time in front of all of us. Um, I do think it was an act of service, generosity for us in the room. For all of us to do better in this work. So I thank her. Thank you, Nicole, for your bravery and your courage.